Okay, well, you answered well, you didn't answer my question about the stone. We're going to come back to the
Oh, fair enough. The stone's a good question.
Okay. First, the field metaphysics. I mean, you asked what difference the field metaphysics made. I don't think it makes much difference in Spinoza's physical theory because I think everybody in his time had some version of a field metaphysics. So that's why the section in Ethics 2 is short. He says, here's the brief concepts of bodies. But also because he has to teach, you said and emphasized in chapter 1, that he's a physicalist, so all the basic concepts have to be introduced right there. Okay? Now, the question that you're asking on page 76, or 66, pardon me, is the Konatos argument circular is...
Oh, yes.
Because you seem to agree with Jonas that Konatos is not introduced at that stage, it's introduced. But unfortunately for Jonas, because he's reading the English translation, he's wrong, of course.
Oh.
Okay. He says that the Konatos is introduced first in Proposition 7, and it's introduced in Proposition 6.
Yeah.
3. Why do you think that's a typo?
Oh, let me. Jonas.
No, there's a typo. I'll answer it for you.
Okay, I had to find it real quick.
In English, when the verb konari occurs, they translate it as endeavor. When the noun occurs, they translate it as konatos. So that means the English reader has completely lost the connection. Okay.
Oh, I see. I
completely lost the connection.
Okay.
And unfortunately for Jonas, konari occurs back in the Lemmas on bodies too. So, so Spinoza is being faithful to his physicalistic. The basic concepts are there. We'll come back to that because you've got
I see what you're saying.
Well, that's a problem you mentioned several times, but you put it aside. But it's a problem you can't put aside.
Circularity?
Yeah, because if I can only recognize individuals if they have konatos, and I only can recognize konatos if I have an individual, then your dissertation would have been very short. Spinoza's theory of individuation, there isn't any. Okay? So presumably you have to solve that problem.
Sure.
Okay, otherwise you're done. Now, as far as the field metaphysics goes, it becomes important when Spinoza, because the field metaphysics, as I said, is accepted in some form or another. Leibniz accepted some form of it, physically, in the monadology and so on. Even Newton did, half-heartedly. So I think Spinoza thinks he doesn't have to do much with it. It certainly becomes important in Ethics 2 and 3, though. Let me just quote the corollary to Proposition 11 here, quickly. He says, hence it follows that when we say that the human mind perceives this or that, we are saying nothing other than that God, insofar as he constitutes the essence of the human mind, has this or that idea. Now, if that isn't the field metaphysics, nothing is. Okay? But it becomes important, field metaphysics becomes important when you move to the mental arena. Whether Spinoza does this successfully is another question, but the point is it does have a role to play.
Seems to make good sense in text.
Bennett can make sense of those passages, Curley can't at all. Okay? Curley can't at all. But now we're left with the problem that you're not sure what an individual is. You're agreeing with Jonas on page 64 that individuals must be organisms, not just mechanical bodies. Then 2 lines later you say, can there be individuals which are not organisms? And you leave that question with a question mark, you don't answer it.
Okay.
And then you say on page 66, your basic question is the Konatos argument circular. Right. And you say, apparently, in order to know an individual, I have to be able to identify the Konatos. And you don't exactly tell us how to do that, but you do tell us on page 94 that both a stone and a vortex lack a Konatos. So even if you don't know what it is, you know what it isn't. Is that right?
Well, let me digest this just a moment. I gotta find. What was the passage on 64? I just need to.
64 is the claim that individuals must be organisms rather than merely mechanical bodies.
I'm trying to find it.
And on the same page, can there be individuals which are not organisms? Question.
Jonas argues that Spinozistic individuals must be organisms rather than men.
Okay. And then on page 57, you quoted Spinoza as saying that the corpora simplicissima are individuals.
Well, I think I can take care of at least 64. There, I think I'm just describing Jonas's view.
Yeah, but you said you thought it was...
Oh, originally,
Yeah.
But I've rejected it in the long run.
All right, now you also said that on page 55, that with the exception of the simplest bodies, all bodies are made up of smaller ones. Where did you get that?
Let's find out.
It's not a quotation from Spinoza.
With the exception of the simplest bodies, all bodies are made up of smaller bodies.
So the simplest bodies are not made up of smaller bodies is the logical conclusion of that. Is that correct?
That would be the logical conclusion of that, but yeah, I'm not
That's
sure.
not what Spinoza
Right,
says.
exactly. That would be
He says simplest bodies are those which are distinguished only by...
only by, and then I give the quote where it says that,
Yeah,
right?
okay, so,
Yeah,
so it is not, Spinoza's not an animist.
No, absolutely.
Well,
And I
you're
say
saying
that
he is.
later, yeah.
You said that on page 55, though.
Yeah, with the exception of no, I have to say that's an incorrect observation on my part.
All
With
right.
the exception of simplest bodies, I should say all bodies are made up of smaller bodies.
Okay,
Yeah.
now you're sure that the stone doesn't have conatus on page 94.
Let's take a look at that.
And then you mentioned that Spinoza doesn't define the term conatus, does he?
I mean, I don't recall a place where Spinoza says, by conatus, I mean this, but
Right.
the term
Why do
does
you
mean
think that
something. Well, because it has a Latin meaning, right? Striving.
Okay, so, I mean, Spinoza's not an axiomatic thinker in our sense. He defines terms that are peculiar to a system, but if a term isn't peculiar to a system, he just...
Well,
uses
and it was in Hobbes and Descartes before.
Oh, okay, why did you pick Hobbes on 109? You said Hobbes uses it too. It's
Yeah.
not only in Hobbes and Descartes, it's also in Newton, it's in Leibniz, in
Not
the
surprising.
Leibniz-Clark correspondence, and more important than that, it's in Huygens too.
Oh, okay. Well, the reason I spoke of Hobbes on 109, two reasons. One is Curley is speaking of him in that passage, in that section of Curley I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
The other is that here we're starting to deal with political and moral matters in which the conatus plays a role that at least Curley believes is similar to a role
Yeah, but
played-
Hobbes uses the term conatus in his physical theory.
Yeah, that's,
So does
Curley
Descartes.
mentions that too.
And
Yeah.
certainly Huygens did, because he didn't know
Yeah.
anything about the state, right? Okay, so Spinoza is using it in the same sense as all these guys, right?
That seems to be right. And
Okay,
in
what's
fact,
the sense?
it would seem to be, well, okay, the primary sense of conatus, I think, because when you think it does appear in the lemmas, conare, is, I think, in the physical theory. But it translates over to psychological theory quite nicely.
Well, we
But-
don't know that, but
Well,
we hope it does.
he thinks that it does.
Okay, but Spinoza doesn't care about that in others too, anyway.
No, he's using it in the physical sense.
Okay, how do you recognize Spinoza then for the bodies, the simplest bodies in the ethics one?
How do you recognize conatus is present? Is that the-
Yeah.
I would imagine that you observe is the only way, or you can rationalize, depending on that they have this sort of striving to persevere. They will resist certain external pressures.
Okay, resistance is the key word.
Mhm.
It is throughout that set of passages.
Right. That's why I initially. Yeah, that's what
Indeed,
we're-
indeed, the corollary to the third lemma is the law of inertia, isn't it?
I'm sorry. Could you say that one more
If
time?
a body is set in motion, it will persevere in motion.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah,
If it is at rest, it will persevere in rest.
yeah, yeah.
There's conatus.
Mhm.
Okay, perseverantia.
Yeah, it'll tend to stay in this. It'll tend to maintain.
That's a very anti-medieval statement.
Mhm.
Just realize he's telling you the whole Aristotelian view of the universe is wrong.
Yeah.
Because for the Aristotelians, if a body is in motion, it will tend to stay, to move toward rest. Okay, so he's reversing that. Right after the passage you quoted,
Page 66?
on page
55.
57,
Okay.
Spinoza makes another interesting claim
Oh, yes.
about, and you mentioned it, but about Jonas,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He says, again, I'm quoting, what we've shown up to this point, starting about the simplest bodies, is true for all individuals as much it is for human beings, homines. Okay? Since, he says, omnia individua, all individuals, quambis diversis gradibus animata tamen sunt.
Yeah.
Okay? Now,
Yeah.
animatum is clearly the word for organism
Mm-hmm.
in Spinoza's Latin. This is another term he doesn't define. And so he's saying to Jonas, you can't say that it's organisms and not mechanical bodies, because everything can be construed as organic using these axioms.
And mechanical too, right? Is that
Okay.
conclusion? Okay.
But that wipes out your claim, doesn't it, on page, I've lost the,
Is it 94? The one?
where you,
The vortex?
no.
Oh.
It wipes out the claim, it doesn't wipe it out, but you're saying here that being an organism is a paradigm. Yeah, page 80.
Oh,
Spinoza thinks
yes.
of organisms as paradigmatic individuals, but now Spinoza thinks that everything is an organism. Your claim that he thinks of organisms as paradigmatic individuals doesn't tell us anything about what he thinks about individuals, does it?
No, I suppose not if everything is an organism.
It doesn't really, the notion of organism doesn't help here. Spinoza won't let you divide. See, again, Jonas is a medievalist. He's divided the universe into two categories, the living and the non-living. And he says Spinoza's thinking of living things, and Spinoza says, no, they're all organisms. Then the claim that organisms constitute individuals doesn't really give us any information.
Well, you know, it's no, that's true. You know, but I still think there's an interesting distinction to be noted between things that we would call organisms and things that we would not call organisms. And now Spinoza, I grant would
It's a
perhaps
distinction, degree at best, though.
I would think that you'd have to say it's a distinction.
Okay, then you still got to find the conatus in the stone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, the one on 94, where I say a stone and a vortex seem to lack a conatus. Again, in this particular area, I'm saying, well, do they really have this conatus? But I don't think I come down in that area saying.
Well, there's a big. Well, you said they seem not to.
But they seem not to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why do they?
And well, at this point, if we're looking at conatus, it appears to be that see, I find it in this chapter. Now, I would grant that it appears that they do have a conatus.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
if you kicked a stone, there's a big stone out in front of the business machine.
It would resist.
It would resist.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I grant that it would have a conatus.
How if you kicked a pile of pebbles?
It would not have scattered.
Okay. So what do we know about conatus now?
Well, we know that conatus, for fact, again, this is why give you a difference between a pile of pebbles and a stone. A stone certainly has a tight enough unity that it will resist.
Okay, so the Spinoza and Leibniz took the concept of conatus comes roughly equivalent to inertial mass in contemporary physics.
That seems
Okay.
fair.
The pile of stones doesn't have, the inertial mass of the pile of stones is the sum total of the stones in it. The inertial mass of the rock is not the sum total of the pieces of the
Sure,
rock.
sure.
Okay, so now we know that inertial mass conatus accounts not just for resistance, it also accounts for what physicists in Spinoza's century call cohesion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But now you can go to your school of fish, can't you?
Right.
And if you swim into a school of fish, you'll feel some conatus.
Mm-hmm.
But it won't be from the school of fish, will it?
In each individual fish. It's Barbonia.
Okay, it'll
Right.
be the individual fish. Can't you do that with a steak too?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I think that's what the move that Barbonia and yourself.
Okay, but then what, the point here is if you stuck with the claim you made in chapter 1.
Right.
That Spinoza is a physicalist.
Right.
The concepts have to be defined at the basic physical level.
I see.
Okay? Then if you extrapolate them, if you're lucky, sometimes he wasn't. We're going to the number.
Okay, that seems.
Okay, but at least we can say at least the
Yeah.
concept of conatus is clear enough if I stick with rocks and stones and schools of fish. I'm not sure how it works when we get to mines. That's another question.
Yeah. That's
Okay,
right.
I'll come back to that though.
Yeah, seems like a good observation.
Okay.
Go ahead.